In the past few weeks, we've seen many cases of travelers, people that have work visas, even green card holders that are being detained on their way to the United States. They're being flagged at the border, being questioned for hours, and in many cases, essentially sent to immigration jail. In this interview, we'll talk to Jasmine Mooney. She was the first person to get so much media attention after she was detained at the border when applying legally for a work visa. She was captured, detained, held there for 3 days at the border, then sent to immigration jail where she was there for 12 long days.
There was no heads up. Next thing you know, I'm taken and for 2 weeks haven't been told anything, moved in different cells, sleeping on cement, sleeping in different jail cells.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking, I was put in chains around my waist, handcuffed to the chains, handcuffs on my feet, full prison outfit.
If you could speak directly to ICE officials or CBP, what would you say to them?
I was met about 200 women and not a single one of them had a criminal record of our conditions inside, and you put the pieces together and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is a business.
So first of all, Jasmine, thank you so much for doing this and sharing your story. I think it's so important for so many people to hear about it, understand what happened, and also maybe learn from this to avoid this from
100%.
happening to other people, right?
Yeah.
So I think maybe we can start just like, you can tell me more or less what happened. March 3rd, 2025, you're going to the border, you're trying to apply for a visa. Why don't you tell me a little bit? And maybe even before that, I know you're Canadian, you had a visa before.
Yep.
Let's kind of go back to March 3rd, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, so to get to March 3rd, I probably should explain what happened previously. That was the deciding factor, I suppose you could say, of what happened to me on the 3rd. So I am Canadian. A year ago, I got a job working with a health and wellness brand in Los Angeles. So I was in Vancouver and I went originally to the Blaine border with all of my paperwork from my lawyer to get my TN visa. When I was there, I have no idea if this guy was just in a really bad mood or something, but he went through my paperwork and he said that the company I was working for was unprofessional because one of my letters was missing a proper letterhead. And he literally didn't give me my visa because of a letterhead. And I got him, my CEO sent him the proper letter with the letterhead within 10 minutes. And he was like, it's too late. I've already revoked it or denied it, sorry. And he said, you're just gonna have to reapply. And I was like, okay. So I went back to Canada and my lawyer was in San Diego. So I told him what happened, and he's like, okay, you're gonna come to San Diego. We're going to go to the San Diego border. I'm going to come with you. I'm going to make sure that all of your paperwork, proper paperwork is there. And we went and I got my visa approved right away, absolutely no issues. And I was living and working in California. So I had gone back and forth, no issues. And then about 4 months ago, I was traveling back to LA from Vancouver, BC, at the airport. And when I went through customs, the border guy said, why were you denied? And then why did you go to that border to get your visa? That's really shady. And I explained to him the situation, and he said, well, they can't process visas there. And I'm like, my lawyer's been doing this for 20 years. I have multiple friends that have gotten it done there. And he's like, well, it wasn't processed properly. And then I'm like, okay, I've been back and forth. I've never had issues. And he said, come with me. And then they were just digging. And they went through the company that I was working with, and they saw that, or said that, because of the deciding factor of why they revoked my visa was because one of the products that we used the ingredient hemp. And and they said, so you can legally work for this company in Canada, but we can't let you work for this company in America. And that was that. And I was like, and there's still discrepancies on that. I've had so many mixed opinions on that as well. And they saw the company, they went through everything when I originally got approved, and it was never issued.
Right.
So total gray area, I don't know. Long story short, I stayed in Vancouver for 3 months, and then I was offered another position with another health and wellness brand doing the same thing, that I wouldn't ever have to worry about any of the ingredients, to say the least. So because I had gone to that border before and I was comfortable with it, I went back there.
The San Isidro border.
The San Isidro. Yeah, I was like, I'm comfortable with that. They were really nice. I was just like, I asked my lawyer, I'm like, would this be an issue? And he's like, no, the worst that can happen is you get denied. And then
and sent back.
And get them, and you go back, right? So then when I got to the border, this is the other thing, like every single agent has a different opinion. There is no consistency, because when I went back to that office, they told me that I wasn't eligible for a TN visa. They said I needed a college degree. And I said, well, for this specific visa, you need 5 years experience. And I've had my company for over 8 years. And they called their supervisor and said, oh, yeah, you're right. You can get this visa. So even just that, I'm like, everyone, it's just so inconsistent. And then they approved my visa, actually. So they're like, okay, yep, they approved my visa. And I don't know what happened. There was one other comment they made about how my passport was going to expire in 2 years and the visa was for 3 years. And then I asked if I could like come back in 2 years when I get my new passport. And it was just like back and forth. And I'm sitting waiting. And then the agent told me, she's like, okay, so we just got word that because of your past 2 issues with your TN visa, you need to apply through the consulate in order to get this visa. And I said, oh, like no one has ever told me that. My lawyers did not even know that. I would have never come here if I knew that. Of course, I'm here to do things properly, right? Like I try to do everything by the book legally to get into your country. And she goes, you didn't do anything wrong. You are not in trouble. You are not a criminal. And that was what really threw me off. I'm like, why did she say that? Of course, like it was so weird. And in hindsight, I know now why she said that. And she's like, but because of your previous issues, we need to send you back to Canada. And I said, okay, that's no problem. Like I was planning on going back anyway. Okay. And she's like, you can just go have a seat. I'm like, okay. And I sit down and I was literally looking at flights, like looking at flights to go back home. And all of a sudden this man comes and he says, Jasmine, he's like, come with me. Takes me into a room, and literally with zero warning, my bags were ripped out of my hand. My phone was taken. My hands against the wall. I was getting pat down. Take off your shoes. They ripped my shoelaces out of my shoes. And I was like, whoa. Like, what is going on? And literally from that moment I was detained. I was thrown in a cell. I was in there for 48 hours, sleeping on a mat with aluminum foil wrapped over me like a dead body. I didn't get a phone call until day 3. I had no idea what was going on. No one told me anything. And then it was on day 3 that finally I sat down with an officer, and that's when they had all the paperwork, and they said, you are being banned from America for 5 years because of your issues. They didn't even really get into my issues or what I did wrong.
So after 3 days of you being detained over there, only then they told you about the 5-year ban?
Yes. I sat in a cell for 48 hours with no one told me anything. And by that time, on day 3, I was so delirious, so just like have no idea what's going on. And another weird thing that she said to me, she's like, it doesn't matter if you sign this or not because it's happening regardless. And I was like, I just want to go home. I will pay for my flight home. Can you please tell me when I am going home? And she's like, I don't know. I have no idea. And that's when I was able to use one phone call to call. I had one call. So I called my best friend because it was the only phone number that I knew by heart, which by the way, guys, start memorizing your family and friends' phone numbers in case you're ever in a situation. It's so important because you don't get to look at your phone half the time, most of the time. So I called my best friend and told her what's happening. I'm like, can you get a hold of my lawyers? Can you get a hold of my family? So she's like, of course. And then that is when I got transferred into what I like call real jail. And it's funny because they refuse to call it jail. They call it detention, I think. But it's like full on jail. Like I'm talking, I was put in chains around my waist, handcuffed to the chains, handcuffs on my feet, full prison outfit, full processed in fingerprints, interviews, psychological tests, medical tests, and then put in a jail cell and locked behind.
And Jasmine, before we talk about that, because I think it's very important, the lady told you that, okay, I can't give you the visa, just wait until they said, I'm going to send you back to Canada. This is an important moment because that's a moment where essentially they decided that you're going to be deported. And there was no reason for it, but they decided they're going to deport you. And I think that's where, you know, for me as an immigration attorney, I seen these cases happen recently where they flip the switch. We're going to deport them, even though deportation should happen if you came illegally and you try to enter or sneak in, then you're deported. If they catch you working illegally in the US, they deport you. You came to apply for a work visa. They determined you qualify, please go home, fine. They determined that they're going to deport you. And so that moment was like, they said, no, you're not getting the visa, just wait. And then suddenly they show up, they pull you against the wall, they handcuff you, and you started. That's when the process started, right?
Yes, but the weirdest thing is they literally approved my visa. They like it was the biggest roller coaster of emotions. It was back and forth, and then they were on calls. I could see them. Like I was in there for hours, going up, talking to them, sitting back down, going up, talking, sitting back down. And then it just happened. The whole deportation process happened with zero warning about what I was about to go through.
Did you sign the document that says, you know, they interviewed you and all that? There's a document with your picture. Did you sign anything like that?
I signed it on day 3 saying I accept the 5-year ban. I can appeal it. This is the process. And that was that.
And you thought they're gonna just let you go, which they used to do before. You signed the document, they just deport you. But they didn't
I just never have heard of any of this, to be honest. Like maybe I am extremely naive, but never in a million years. I would have never ever gone there if I knew that was even a possibility, if they would deny my visa. And yeah, you're right. Like so many people online are like, she was trying to sneak in, she was there working illegally, like she deserves this. I'm like, I'm literally trying to do everything by the book. Like I was there with 50 pages for my application, like for my TN. You know, I had everything and I had been there before and it was absolutely zero issues. So yeah, it was just so, I can't even explain the feeling because I literally felt like I was kidnapped. Like truly, like I'm like, what is happening right now?
I mean, in a way it is. I mean, that's what it was, right? Now, once they moved you from the border, they moved you to Otay Mesa, right? That was the first detention facility. That was like the jail. You know, I've been there many times. It looks like Oz. The long corridors, the white.
Yeah. It literally, it's like, I was like, okay, I am in a movie right now. Like this is exactly what a movie looks like.
And so, did you have the orange or the blue
Okay, so what I learned in jail is your uniform is your status of criminal record. So
Right.
I was navy blue, which means every single person who is wearing navy blue has 0 criminal record.
And again, it's not a very nice place over there. It kind of feels very Aussie, but you were there for a while, and then they moved you to San Luis, and
Yes.
the last detention facility where you actually stayed until you were released. Do you remember how it happened when they moved you and why?
Okay, so I was woken up at 3 a.m. from a guard saying, pack your things, you're leaving. And I was like, I get to go home? Oh my God, I get to go home. Okay. I'm like, do I get to go home? And she goes, I don't know where they're taking you. I'm like, okay, great. Like, no one ever knows what's going on.
Right.
And then I packed the things that they give you and brought my stuff downstairs, and there was about 10 girls standing there too, all crying. And I was like, what's going on? And then that's when I learned what transferred means. So if you don't know what transferring is, they transfer you to another prison, but it is literally the worst experience. It took 24 hours, okay? And anything that I'm saying right now, I am not exaggerating on what goes on in there. They wake you up in the middle of the night, and so there was about 10 girls and about 50 guys that they were transferring all from Otay Mesa to San Luis in Arizona. And so they wake you up, they bring you down into holding, and the holding cells they're nicknamed the ice boxes. They are freezing. You don't have anything but like your uniform. It's hurry up and wait. So you're sitting, waiting. Then they have to process everyone out one by one, which means you have to go into your normal clothes that you got or taken in. They have to give you your belongings and make sure that you have everything, and then they put you in chains, literal chains. So again, chains around the waist, handcuffs, on the feet as well, and they load us onto the prison bus, and we drove from San Diego to Arizona in chains. So we're in chains that entire ride, and then when you get to the new jail, they have to process everyone one by one. And you have to wait till every single person is finished before you get to go to sleep. So it was literally exactly 24 hours from the moment we left until we got to sleep. And I say in my essay that this new prison made Otay Mesa look like the Four Seasons.
Wow.
We were put into one cell. There was probably 30 girls in one room. It was just like this room. You walked in, there were bunk beds all along the wall. There was picnic tables, like metal picnic tables in the middle, open showers and bathrooms that like everyone had to share, and then some telephones. And literally that was it. There were no pillows. A bunch of the beds were missing sheets. We only got one blanket. It was freezing in there. They keep the fluorescent lights on 24/7 at all times. And it was like super awkward, like going in when we first got there, because there was half the girls were already there sleeping. So you're like trying not to wake them, but then of course they all wake up and they're like, oh, new people, like new jailmates. Like it was and then you're literally been up for 24 hours. I felt like I was hallucinating. I'm like, oh my God, like where am I? No, it like, honestly, it's like, well, I've done a lot of research after, and just the things that they do are literal, like actual torture methods, like psychological torture methods. Like there is no reason that the cells need to be this freezing cold. Like I don't understand why they do that. But then when you do your research, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like everything in there is meant to break you. Yeah.
Jasmine, it's, I mean, the way you describe it, obviously it's very, very courageous and how you talk about it. But the one thing that I'm trying to understand, and I think we talked about it before, is that you offered you begged them to let you pay for your flight back.
Mhm.
You told them multiple times, correct?
Mhm.
And I think it's important to talk about that because this is actually one of the key elements of this whole process. Because normally, if they, they don't want to give you the visa, they want to deport you as well.
Mhm.
If you offer to pay for your flight back, they should consider it and actually work with you to get you out of there instead of putting you in prison, right?
Mhm.
Do you remember offering to pay for your flight
I
as
pa-
early as
I
possible? And what
I
happened when you did that?
I offered since day one, and every day I try. Okay, I didn't even tell you this part. So I wasn't spoken. No, there wasn't a single ICE officer that talked to me my entire duration.
Okay.
Like
In the first 3 days.
in the 12 days that I was there.
Oh my God.
12 days that I was there. I put in a request. So when I finally, the first person I told was when I signed, right? I signed to get my 5-year ban, and I said, I will pay for my flight. Please, can I go home? And then every single officer, I swear, is trained to be like, I don't know your case. I'm just doing my job. I'm not part of your case. I don't know. I can't make those decisions. And so when I was in Otay Mesa, I was so exhausted from those 3 days. So then when I finally got out and met, like, I don't know if you call him the warden or like whoever is like running the place, I was getting the lowdown of, okay, how can I get my calls? And he showed me, and I'm like, how do I talk to someone about getting out of here? And he's like, you need to contact your ICE officer. You can put a request in on this iPad,
Right.
this tablet thing. So I immediately did that. And if they were subpoenaed and went through my notes that I sent the ICE officer, I specifically wrote in the notes, I was like, I need to talk to someone. I will pay for my flight home. I literally said, I will charter a plane. Like, please, like, someone come talk to me. And so the next day, someone did come to talk to me, but guess what they said? Hi, Jasmine. I'm not your officer, but I don't know your case. I can see that they're working on it, and someone will get back to you. That's all they said. And then he's like, you're Canadian? What are you doing here? I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. And he's like, you shouldn't be in here that long if you're Canadian. And that gave me hope, because when I was getting put into jail and I was going through all the interviews, there was one officer where I was like begging for information, and he looks at me and he said, listen, you could be in here for days, you could be in here for weeks, but I'm just gonna tell you right now, you need to mentally prepare yourself to be in here for months.
Wow.
Can you imagine hearing that? Like, I literally thought like I was gonna puke.
Yeah.
And that was when I was in the cells with nothing, and I'm like, I have to stay in that for months. Like, no, like I would die. Like, anyone would die in those conditions to stay in that for months. So
Yeah.
But that's just the inconsistency of no one knows what's going on.
And the crazy thing is that eventually you were released, because of the media. There was so much media about this for those past 2 weeks. But do you think that if there was no media pressure, or if somebody that doesn't have access to as much influence as you had, do you think that the results would have been different?
100%. Listen, to put things in perspective, I am Canadian. I had a Canadian passport. I had multiple lawyers, resources, family. I had politicians advocating for me to get out. It took me 12 days to get out. The second my story was released, ICE called my lawyer and said, oh, yes, Jasmine, she's here. We weren't aware that she would pay for her own flight. Yeah, no problem. We'll get her out. Let's figure something out. And I was released the next day.
No, it just
Do
shows
I
you.
know for sure it was the media?
Yeah.
We can just.
Well, I mean, it's it definitely helps. I think the past week I have Canadians, Europeans, before coming, they're worried about, the whole experience of coming to the United States. If a friend or somebody Canadian or not Canadian is going to ask you, what are some advice that you give somebody who wants to travel to the US now, after going through what you went through?
I mean, it's so subjective. Like, truly, it's so subjective. Like, for instance, my mom just flew down to get all my stuff for me from LA. She just got back today. She went and drove my car back because I was still there. And no one said a thing to her, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, it depends if you're going on a work visa. It depends what border you're crossing. Like, it's so inconsistent. And of course, I don't want to make people scared to travel, right? Like, and that's the hardest thing. Like, we should not be scared to travel. But every single person I know has a horror story about customs at some point in their life. Obviously, it's very rare to be thrown in jail for 2 weeks. So I got like the real crazy, the extreme of it. But I genuinely believe, I know for a fact I would still be in there. I would still be in there if I didn't have my privilege. There was another Canadian who was in there, and she got put in without her passport. And when I met her, she had been in there for 7 weeks, and she's Canadian. I met someone that had been in there for 10 months.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we have clients that reach out to us, and the stories are crazy. But I'm trying to think, because for me, also as an immigration attorney, but also somebody who helps immigrants and advocates for them, do you think that anything in that changed since the first time you applied for the visa, and they said no, you're missing letterhead, or the technicality the first time, all the way through the time you went back to the border? Do you think that there was something that was like a red flag, or somebody should have seen that, and warn you, Jasmine, don't go to the border? Or
so if you've ever had issues in the past, if you've ever had denials, if you've ever had anything revoked, that is a way bigger deal than what I had any clue about. Right? Like, I never, ever in a million years would have thought that because my visa was denied over something so minor, that would have snowballed into what happened to me. Because if that didn't happen to me, that one tiny minor error and denial, then I wouldn't have been flagged the second time, and then the third time. But you just don't think about these things, because to me it was not a big deal. And then I went and reapplied and got it legally, and I was totally fine. And going back and forth too, like, it was never an issue until one person thinks it's an issue. So I've also heard stories recently where they are finding like minor criminal records.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to tell you. The flagging of people coming in has never been a new thing, but the way they flag people now, it's new. Anything can flag you. In your case, it was a second visa denial. Another client, he had a DUI 18 years ago. One DUI 18 years ago, held in detention for 8 days. Another client had a possession. He was 21 years old. He's 50 today. So we know that there are little things that flag. The flagging is becoming more of a trigger. Trigger happy thing. But like I said, your case is obviously an extreme case, but it is still a case that flagged them because of your previous denial, right? And I have zero, for the record, I have zero criminal record. And so it was truly just those minor issues. Yeah, absolutely. And now, we're thinking to ourselves, well, if we have something in our records, what do we do? Like, how do we know? I mean, they don't tell you. So it's a question of luck. Some officers are going to be nice. Some officers are going to be.
But that's the problem. It shouldn't be there's just no consistency. Like, how is it fair if you go into this lane, you're fine, and then if in this lane you're put in jail, right? There's just it's so crazy the power that they have. Like, even when I got my visa denied the first time, one of the officers afterwards literally apologized to me because of that. And he's like, this shouldn't have happened. And I'm really sorry that I can't do anything for you. Like, you deserve this to work for this company. Right. And then, but I was like, oh, he's like, that's so kind. And now I realize how big a deal that one denial was. And you're just like, oh, if I would have gone to the office an hour later when that guy was done work and had this guy, there would be no issues, right?
Exactly.
So that is the most frustrating part about the whole travel situation in these borders, because my friends have so many stories of being pulled in over something that is so insane, and never had issues before. So
right. No, what happened to you was definitely insane.
Extreme. Just extreme.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, if you could speak directly to ICE officials or CBP, what would you say to them about the policy that we have right now, and what can they do to change it from somebody who was, on the other side and experienced the system that they might not even know?
I mean, I have done a lot of research, and there were so many things that when I was in there just did not make sense to me. I'm like, why is this happening? Why is this process so difficult? But then when you see that they are privately owned, publicly traded, that this is a business, that they get X amount of dollars of government funding, and that the busier they are, the more heads they have, the more money they make, and then they're cutting costs of our conditions inside, and you put the pieces together and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is a business, right? So I want to touch on this because I think a lot of people will be like, okay, well, a lot of people in there did overstay their visas or were there illegally. So I'm going to speak for all the women that I met. Everyone isn't mad about getting deported. All of the women who overstayed their visas admitted to me that they take full responsibility for overstaying. A lot of them actually tried to reapply and got denied, and they've been living in the US for 10 years and their entire life is there and their children's lives. And so it's not about getting deported, it is the process of getting deported. Because now what's happening is these women are getting taken off the streets, pulled over in their cars, taken outside their jobs, getting taken from immigration offices, put into the system, and now they are stuck in there for, I'm talking months. And if you get pulled off the street without your passport and you get put in the system, good luck. And so it's not only about the conditions in there. I'm talking, we were given one spoon, one styrofoam cup for our entire duration. There's no outside, there's nothing to do. You're sitting in a cell where everything in there is meant to break you. The food is not food. Our towels to shower were hand towels, right? Like, I can go on and on and on and on about the conditions, but then these poor women are getting deported back to their countries, and every single thing that they own is stuck in America, and they can't afford to send it home. And so now it's just there. I asked them, what do you do with it? They're like, we just leave it. We can't do anything. And they're in there for months. It's like, if you're going to get deported, just send me home, please. I will never come back to America. Just send me home. And that is the issue. That is what I'm trying to be a voice for. It's very different. And remember, none of these women had a criminal record, okay?
It's very important to mention that. Yeah.
It's very important. I met about 200 women, and not a single one of them had a criminal record. These women are teachers, they are nurses, they are so lovely, and I'm a very strong person, thank God. But what they go through, or what we went through, it will destroy you. Like, what I witnessed in there of just like these women are stripped away from their kids, from their children, from their husbands, from their jobs, and they are completely shattered and then sent back to their countries with nothing. There has to be a better process. There has to be.
Right.
Nothing that I witnessed makes sense until you realize that how much money that these places are making on people getting put in there. So
No, I think it's a very important message, Jasmine, and hopefully, whoever needs to hear it will hear it. And as we end our broadcast, what's next for you? I know you're back from this horrible experience, but I think it's important to see that, there is life after removal. I have a lot of clients that came back. And so first of all, let's talk about this 5 years. So you have this bar right now. You could apply for a waiver potentially, or, not appeal, but a waiver. But what are your plans? Do you want to come back to the US one day? Do you want to, what?
I love America. I love my friends there. I loved living there. I'm not going to let this jade me. I am going to be working on my appeal. Thankfully, and it's so funny, I'm not allowed to physically be in America to work for American companies, but I'm legally allowed to work for American companies remotely. So I'm still going to pursue my career in health and wellness and working with brands. I'm still going to be working with Holy Water, the visa that I lost previously because I'm allowed to work for them from Canada, but can't be in America. And then, I have no idea. I'm going to start the appeal process. And I'm just going to pivot. Unfortunately, like I said, if this happened to me a year ago, I would be crying in my bed and wouldn't have left my house by now. But right. I'm strong, and I'm going to use my voice to try and help people and be an advocate for change. And I am not going to give up, and I'm not going to let a system break me. I just refuse. And if this happens to any of you, you just have to know that this too shall pass, and you will get through it, and it's going to make you a stronger person. And also, if anyone out there has stories, I encourage you to speak out, because there will never be change in this world if people don't speak up. And unfortunately, it's a scary, scary world, and people are scared to speak up, but we need you. We need your voices, because what happened is so unjust, and we need to make change.
Absolutely. And change will happen, and thank God we have waivers, and so many people came back after removal, and I know you will come back, and at least maybe, like I said, sometimes you have to be chosen to lead a purpose, a goal. And maybe you were the one. So
honestly, a lot of the women that I met in there, I promised them I would use my voice because they don't have one. So that's why I'm doing this. And I'm really optimistic that we can make change.
Absolutely. Like I said, we all have to work together. The attorneys, the clients, the people who went through the process, and hopefully somebody up there will hear us and change will happen. Thank you so much, Jasmine.
I hope so.
It was a pleasure, and I appreciate it. And, we will spread the word as much as we can and keep fighting for immigrants all over the country.
Yes, we love you.